This is the Hypothetically Sound podcast, hosted by Alec, Kevin, Randy, and Xavier, a show that explores the maybes, how comes, and what ifs of life. Join in on the unfiltered, raw, and real conversations today.
All right, welcome back to Hypothetically Sound. We're going to continue on our World Mysteries tour here with Ancient Egypt, boys. Now,
nice.
I chose Ancient Egypt because it is shrouded in mystery. The mythology is super cool. The pyramids, you got the Sphinx, you got just the culture in general is just a complete mystery to us. For the most part, you got the hieroglyphics along with mummification and all these things. But I do want to start off by talking about the pyramids, the Great Pyramids of Giza. Giza? Nah, that's Italian.
Gouda cheese.
Also, probably. I don't know my cheese, dude. I'm from Wisconsin. I don't know my cheese. Oh God, I'm crucified. Anyways, the pyramids are they are one of the great wonders of the world, the 7 biggest wonders, because everything about them doesn't make sense. We've explored some of them, we've came up with theories about them, and yet no one can decide or agree on a lot of these things. For example, a lot of the pyramids had like secret rooms in it. In 1993, they put a robot into one of the pyramids in the southern shaft of one, and they noticed that there was an empty space behind another door, which was found a little bit later. Why is he smiling like that?
Because you said shaft.
I fucking hate
you. More importantly, the southern shaft.
Anyways, yeah. So, and it examined and it found this little room, and it was whatever. People were like, "What the fuck? It's kind of weird, right?" Well, in 2010, they brought a new robot, a more modernized one, and it took photos, for the same area, and it showed like copper handles and some paintings in there, but despite no one being in there for 9 years, they had like fresh scratches and stuff on the walls and ceiling.
Sounds like crazy. Rats, maybe something like that.
I mean, it could possibly be animals, but like it's decent size. I would say it is kind of a decent size. Like I think a person could fit into it.
Mm-hmm.
So rats getting the ceiling might be a little weird.
Mm-hmm.
Another big mystery is about how old these pyramids are. People assume that the Sphinx that sits right outside of them is younger than the pyramids themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And judging by the erosion of the Sphinx, it takes about 8,000 years to get to the point it was, which places a lot of doubt on the original theories of the age of the Great Pyramids.
Yeah.
I have a whole theory of my own with the pyramids, because how they're built, right? That in itself is a mystery that we, still have trouble coming to agreement on how it was done. I always thought, people are like, oh, they were built from the ground up. I think they were built from the up down, from the top down. That's what I think personally.
A lot of people, there have been theories that have been tossed around where they were built right on top of one another, like the blocks were.
Mm-hmm.
But which would explain like the weight and the lack of gaps between them. But like other geologists would debunk it by saying that the blocks are processed sedimentary rocks. Which I have no idea what the fuck that means. I just read it and it just doesn't make sense. Anyways, that they're processed in a way that they couldn't just be built on top of one another, because I'm assuming it had to take time to dry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's why I think they were built from like the top down. It would only, in my brain at least, make sense, because sand shifts, things like that. Sand dunes, all that. That's all shifting sand. it definitely would be possible to build a pyramid in the sand and over, thousands of years with the earth changing, sand moving, that they, kind of have shown the body that was originally underground.
True, yeah. I can see that. And what's crazy about the ancient Egypt culture is there are 2,000 years that we have no idea what they were doing.
Mhm.
So like the pre-dynastic period, from like 5,000 BC to 31,000 BC, there's not much detail. And what we're guessing is that during this time they were learning all these things to become the powerhouse that they became over the next 3,000 years. So we're
Mhm.
talking about a 2,000 year period where, like, look at us, where how far we've gotten in 2,000 years
Mhm.
in our current culture. So imagine what they could do in 2,000 years. And so, like, just some of the things that they were able to accomplish. Pyramids to me are probably top 3 of the most insane things that they were able to do.
Mhm.
Uh, like the fact that they were able to not only develop a language, but develop math and science and
Mhm.
all these things that they developed that we use now, that we come from the culture, is insane. So the fact that I've never seen the inside of a pyramid, but like we know how big they are just in scale, and I'm assuming they're not hollow. They have like you said, they have rooms and stuff in them. Like imagine that scale and putting rooms in it and still being structurally sound to last thousands of years.
Mhm.
Absurd. Just
Without modern
strictly absurd.
technology, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So like where, like I don't there isn't a I don't see pyramids as a simple try again until it works. It seems like something that they just developed and did. Like, are there pyramids out there that are failures that we've discovered? Like, 'cause I personally don't know. I didn't come across any in the research leading up to this. I guess maybe I didn't think about it. But like, are there failed pyramids? Like, do we have examples of failed architecture from the Egyptian period?
So the weird thing about that actually is that there is different types of pyramids in
Yeah,
Egypt, and there's one of the oldest ones is actually like a step pyramid, which in my opinion seems more realistic of building like humans building a said pyramid. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, and this one was like the oldest, one of the oldest ones. So at some point in time, they had to come up with a way to make it a pyramid smooth as possible and like too perfect, right? And it's not just like how perfect a pyramid is. These things stand extremely tall, 146 meters tall. They're like 240-ish meters wide, give or take. You know what I'm saying? Like these
Right.
things are fucking huge.
Yeah, it's no
Um,
small structure.
it took like 2.5 million blocks to make it. And a lot of geologists say that some of the stones are from over 500 miles away, which is kind of sketchy thinking about the fact that they didn't have like wheels and shit.
they did have some really well crafted boats though. Living on the Nile, they came up with some really cool boats. So that I can see, if they crafted fishing boats and other boats, that they could have crafted a boat specifically made to transport heavy rock.
I mean, for sure, but you still got to get said rock into boat.
Yeah,
And like a lot of them are, I did see a lot of like weird predictions when doing research on this that said that some people think the construction time for these only took like 20 years.
Mhm.
And that
That's
seems really weird, right?
well,
Mhm.
didn't we find, like, isn't there evidence that they were they developed mass, like, production lines early on? So like a lot of wood logs that they used to transport heavy things, and like obviously slave labor. But I thought there was evidence out there that they developed multiple different forms of assembly lines to move objects quickly, be it rope and pulleys, because like you said, they are the pioneers of math and medicine and science. So like it wouldn't be outside of the realm of thinking that they developed a nice geometry algorithm to move these things quickly and make them weigh less than they actually
Efficiently.
did.
And like that's fair, but to do what they did, and this includes like they somehow managed to line up like their tower, their pyramids and all that stuff to almost face exactly like true north. So their points all are almost exactly aligned on the compass using like probably just stars and stuff, right?
Right.
And doing other like crazy shit like that, like just having a great like knowledge of detail and just architectural skill in general. But even today, like with our technology, that's still a lot to pull off. I don't like. I think we could do it.
Have we
And
attempted to make a pyramid similar to that
like
nowadays?
Vegas and shit has their replicas. I know
But
it's
it's
obviously
made out of steel and glass, and
but like no, that's the thing, right? Is like I don't know if we'd be able to do it the way they did it or do it as well as they did, even with our technology.
Yeah.
And that's what makes the guy like it's just weird, right? Because we're assuming it's a couple makeshift assembly lines and slaves that did it all.
what do you think did it?
I don't know. I I have no idea. I'm not gonna lie. Like I do believe like aliens fucked with the Egyptians at some point, right? Based off of like hieroglyphs that were found and just like again, some things just don't add up.
The crazy.
Go for it. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say that kind of like in regards to the slave concept. At the same time though, eh, I don't really know if those could be built by slaves. I think
Yeah,
you would need people smarter than that to do that sort of construction.
and that's the thing. I don't think slave drivers could do it. Like could command either. Like you would literally need the person who is
A big
building it.
brain.
Yeah, the people that who designed it need to be everywhere at once. Like without technology, having to move that much, constantly, you would either have to build it in pieces,
Mm-hmm.
which would also make it really difficult to do in 20 years.
Right.
And making sure everything's even. Or you would need some sort of help through like technology or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's also really weird about them is like the reason they're built as tombs, the extravagantness of just the culture of their dead. Real popular one is like King Tut, which surrounds a whole mystery in his pyramid and tomb. Because you guys heard of the King Tut curse, right? The curse of the King Tut.
No.
You haven't heard about that?
No.
I have not.
All right. So back in like 92, when they first found his tomb, they found a plaque within it that essentially warned them that there would be a dire punishment or something for anyone who entered the tomb because it's cursed. They didn't believe it, obviously, and they went in. But by 1930, there was reports of about 22 deaths among those who were present when the tomb was open. So in 8 years, 22 people who worked on that died.
Maybe asbestos.
But it wasn't just like them. It was also like their family members.
Oh,
So like direct relatives as well. So like, well, the only theory is, is there was like poison or something on the walls that
it
obviously
would
was
make
highly
sense.
Because you would assume like pharaohs were such a big deal. The pyramids, the the Egyptians were constantly being invaded by different people trying to take them over. So it would make sense that they would have some kind of booby trap and long-term defense against people trying to find the money that they were buried with, or
Yeah, they're the
any of the
valuable one.
things that they were buried with.
Okay,
Mhm.
so I'm gonna put this little bit on a little post-it note, stick it on the board. We're gonna come back to it. When they examine Tut's body to find out how he dies, that's also another mystery. No one knows how. Some think it might be a chariot accident. Some people might think he might have got kicked by a hippo. He died young. He was 19.
Yeah, 19. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
But when they examine the stuff, they realized that he had like a club foot and couldn't stand by himself even. So like a lot of these things got thrown out the window. And like they noticed that he was like missing parts of his ribs and stuff, and some people theorized that they were like grave robbers because mummies got put jewels and stuff in their body when they died, and so they
Mhm.
assumed the grave robbers snatched the jewels. But going back to the poison thing, if his tomb was lined with poison and somehow that poison stayed dormant for thousands of years, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Oh, why wouldn't it still be in there when, like, let's say those grave robbers wouldn't, right? Or like people who checked it out now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right.
Like you would have traces even on the body itself when you studied it.
Sure. Sure.
Wasn't it in practice for Egypt to, when mummifying, they would open the body, um, you know, put the organs and pieces through different processes in order to preserve them. Would that not be a time that some of that could have happened as well, though, as mementos or things like that for their people?
I, I think so. I think that's a fair point.
It's kind of what I would think of, because if it was poison, whoever was there would have been affected by a grave robber or not. Um, so that would be the only thing that I could think that could, you know, coincide with it being lined with poison or anything like that would be that, they originally put in there that way. That would be the only thing that makes sense to me.
Um, but I also feel like I read somewhere. Don't quote me on this. But I read somewhere. I believe that a lot of times that servants and stuff were locked into the room with them.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like Genghis Khan.
His was a little different.
His was more extreme to what the Egyptians did, but there's reason to believe that Genghis Khan did his same burial as the same two Egyptians. But yeah, I think it was servants and close relatives. For some pharaohs were locked in, and it wasn't like they were murdered in there. I'm pretty sure they were left food and light and stuff like that
to take care of all the final preparations of the
and to
mummification.
live a little bit. And I think
Yeah.
some were left poison too if they wanted to leave early, knives like that. Uh, but it's still crazy. Like this ultimate being in your culture passes away, and people willingly give up their lives for it. Like I'm looking, there's been many many pharaohs. Obviously, we're talking about almost 6,000 years of culture. Uh, and for there's a good chunk that we don't know about early pharaohs. Obviously, I told you first 2,000 years, not much known. Like they have guesses, and most of the guesses I'm seeing, like they have names and from like pottery and stuff, and most of it says believed to never existed. Like so, like the beginning pharaohs are such a mystery that maybe something in that time frame that we don't know has led to that culture of practice. Maybe, like we said, battles over whoever the next pharaoh will be. Maybe battles over wealth or uh, desecration led to the pyramids being necessary. Or maybe it simply and probably likely scenario is one pharaoh uh his ego was bigger than everybody before him and wanted the ultimate uh burial, and he said and figured out what better way to do it than have me in the biggest possible place, kind of like Taj Mahal. He wanted something for his wife, and
the biggest pyramid was actually a pharaoh, thought to be a pharaoh's pyramid, created to be his grand entrance into the afterlife.
Which brings me to something else I want to discuss. The belief system of the Egyptians. Now, we are in modern day used to one God. That is the common belief in many cultures around the world. But before one God became prevalent, it was you had the Greek gods, which if I had to believe in a system of religion, it would be more along the lines of the Greek gods. And then there's the Egyptian gods. They had many gods for many different things. Do you and this is obviously this is incredibly hypothetical because there's no way to prove it false or true. Do you think that similar to my belief in Jesus, it was just a man that was extraordinary in his time? Do you think these gods that they worship were extraordinary people or actual beings from maybe a different dimension, maybe alien, or actual gods?
I would say that in reality, I would say they're actual beings, but I think in reality, they, like, for the Nile, Sobek, the god of the Nile, he's a crocodile, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming what happened is they saw lots and lots of crocodiles in the Nile and assumed that the crocodile ruled the Nile, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you get Sobek. Same with Ra, he's a bird.
Yeah, a lot of their gods in Egyptian culture is based around human bodies with some form of animal head.
And like I also think, like, with mythology, I think the belief of Osiris probably contributed to the mummification process on why they did it, just for him coming back to life after being rebuilt. Which can make sense why they try to preserve organs and stuff and put them back and all that fun jazz.
Mm-hmm.
So that one day they may get rebuilt like Osiris.
And that's kind of like, yeah, much like, through time, how religions kind of exist. I think it was there to, control people, give them a sense of hope, but also a sense of direction, and then use that to, power or fuel towards a individual direction.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, I'm more like, if I had to pick one that I believe is true, Greek mythologies, which is something I want to cover later on in our podcast future. But Greek mythology and their gods seem more believable, I guess, in my mind, and seem like less of a crutch. But I think most, most religious things are crutches in my mind.
I personally think that Egyptian mythology is more realistic. But yeah.
So what is as we're talking about their gods and mythology, I think it would be amiss to not bring up their worship of cats. How do you think that became a thing? Like, for me, I honestly I don't know. Kind of like superstition, a cat walked through or did something at the perfect time, and someone with power witnessed it and was like, this is what we have to have. This is a creature that we need to protect and watch after. Because looking at things during research, they believe that almost every household held a cat to two for luck.
You ready for this?
Yeah.
About to nerd out, boy. All right. So, like, Basset, being in some cases or some readings, is the daughter of Ra, right? One of the daughters of Ra, which is one of their big gods. God of the sun. He brings the day. He fights off the Serpent of Night every day to bring the sun back. Bastet is seen as like the goddess of like the home, fertility, childbirth. So as important Ra is to bring the sun every day, Bastet would be seen as the thing to keep them going. Like that is the deity of like generations essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And I think since Bastet was also depicted as a cat, having it in your home would make sense for luck because you're worshiping Basset's beast, to bring luck for just a domestic life. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think like Bastet is the main female goddess. I guess like every pantheon has that one goddess that has like their goddess of way too many things.
Mm-hmm.
I think Bastet's that for them. Also, cats are probably everywhere in Egypt, so probably also helped with that.
Makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Good, glad to see that you guys don't think I'm talking on my ass here.
Thinking I didn't think that from the very beginning.
Listen here, kid. I'm not going to do it on the podcast.
But back to the pyramids a bit more. It's pretty interesting though. When we talk about how they're built and things like that, because like one of the coffers, for example, that was in the Pyramid of Khufu, the Great Pyramid of Giza, was a granite coffer that was made in a single piece. Like there wasn't multiple pieces to it, and it was bigger than the doorway into it. So that means that it was there from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it really makes you wonder: were they built from the bottom up, and they prepared on the way up? Were they built from the top down?
Everything had to be planned perfectly. As I mentioned earlier, they had to be geniuses in architecture because like all the pyramids have little slots and openings and rooms and stuff. And to make sure that the thing could still support it with all these gaps in its core structure, like it had to be something weird, right? And this is assuming that there aren't more rooms that we haven't discovered, which I am sure there are. I'm sure
there's a whole tunnel system under the pyramids.
So that alone kind of, I don't know, pyramids are weird, man. And I honestly don't think we have a brain that would be able to make one from scratch and get it to work as well.
A little bit to note, which has probably came to light a little bit more as of now. I haven't done too much research, but again, there are tunnels below the pyramids as well. And unfortunately, there's not much information that is out there because it's under a high level of confidentiality. It really makes you wonder, if everything else is public, why would something like, those tunnels be something confidential?
For sure. I think they're going to remain one of the greatest mysteries of our world, along with like Stonehenge and all them.
Yeah.
It's kind of terrifying to think about that there was a civilization like that at some point. If they did it themselves, even that died out.
And that's the crazy thing, and something I was going to bring up here soon. Like the ancient Egyptians, wow, I can't speak. They were so powerful and so technology advanced, and to end the way they did it's weird. It's like it's the same with like all of the Roman Empire, everything like that, just ending the way they do. So in around 500 BC, Egypt is taken over by the Persians. And then around 300 BC, the Persian Empire just gives Egypt to Alexander the Great. And then after he conquered Egypt, it eventually ends up in the hands of the Romans after they defeated Mark Antony and Cleopatra, and that's a whole huge thing. But like, do you think? And this could be the last thing we talk about. Do you think when you're seen as such a power and so advanced, do you lull yourself into a comfort of no one can touch us? Or do you think there is a lifespan of a world power that us in America, even though I don't think America is a world power per se, uh, there are people who believe that. Do you think just like the Egyptians, the Romans, the Greeks, we are heading into a downfall law? Or do you think we still have room to grow?
I think first I want to say I think the Egyptian patriarchy, I don't know what the fuck to call it, the Egyptian empire, part of the reason it went down is because their thirst for power. I don't think it was like a lull of power. I think like partially like Cleopatra going with the Romans and all that was a direct I can't think of the word, reason, I guess. Yeah, direct reason of the downfall of the empire. I think it was a start up that hill.
Right. And that's I would say, because you would think, right, they were architects, they weren't a war civilization.
But
And I
they
think
sorry.
no.
I was gonna say I think that gives them a socialized advantage, a sociable advantage over, let's say, the Romans, because just their architecture and everything was superior at the time, and that gives them power in that sense.
Right.
Because that's all you had then was either armies or architecture and culture.
And Xavier's point, for as advanced as they were in things, their typical military equipment, bows and arrows, spears, and round-tipped shields. Like you think that you're going up, if as soon as the Persians, the Greeks, and the Romans come in, they're coming in with steel and iron.
100% agriculture difference. Like, it's probably way harder to find metal shit in Egypt than it is in Rome at the time.
True.
It was 100% just land privilege. I mean, the same thing happened in Africa when it was invaded by Europe and things like that. Like, just 100% resource privileges.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have many threats besides, things that you could potentially avoid easily, like a hippo or crocodile, you don't really see the need to advance your weaponry as much.
Yeah.
So,
is it like that they don't have a need, or they don't have the ability to? Because when you have, you surround yourself with like-minded people, and for example, Egypt was all about the architecture. You would think it'd be very hard to find a individual that was, persuasive enough in their culture to change the path or direction that society is looking at. Which, we even see in America, where we funnel a lot of our money towards certain things, and it's hard to, once people's mind are set on something or direction, it's hard to take them off of that direction and bring them somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a resource game. I think like they put all their resources into making the pyramids and stuff, and they probably just didn't have any more to advance other things.
Right.
It's true, because most of their military was used to protect their fields and crops and everything along the Nile. And then eventually it is believed that some pharaohs may have fought, kind of been like the leader, like Alexander the Great and things like that. But most of them just stayed back till it got to a point where they just hired mercenaries to do their work. Which I think, if you And obviously 300 isn't the most accurate movie to go off if it's a story, but when uh, the Egyptians come to take over the land, or the Persians come over to take the land, most of their army is filled with mercenaries or people from different cultures. And I think that's what may have led to the downfall too in the Egyptian culture is when you're not fighting for your homeland, especially in a time like that, it's not as important to you. So you can run if things start getting bad.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you're like the Greeks or the Romans, you're fighting for your land. It's not someone else fighting in a different land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's wild.
No,
It really is.
There's so much to get into with the Egyptian culture. Like, there's no way in a 40-minute, 30-minute podcast you can even touch on a percentage of what is the ancient culture of Egypt, and we do our best to hit on things and talk about as much as we can and be informative as much as we can.
Yeah. You guys know that there's a mortar used on the pyramids that still supposedly we can't figure out what the ingredients are?
Interesting. Probably cat poop.
Probably. Or a lot of something from human bodies.
I mean, it could also just be poison. Who knows?
True. I mean, but not everybody who goes to the pyramids are just dying.
I mean, have you been to the pyramids? Have you been inside?
No.
There you go. Do you know anyone who has?
I'm not.
Do you know anyone who has?
No, I'm not even.
Exactly.
What I mean,
why? Because they all dead, nigga. They're dead. They're dead.
Nah.
It's
I mean, like
unfortunate.
even externally, what they use to seal the stones and the gaps in between and stuff like that.
I don't know,
But,
man. It's weird. It is a very weird thing. Again, it's one of those mysteries that I don't think we will ever discover, and I think like the confidential shit will only make us question more things rather than give answers. Pyramids are just Egypt in general is just a fascinating, mysterious culture, and I think that's part of the major appeal of it, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right, and with that,
I was just about to say the same thing.
Yeah, with that wraps up the podcast. At least this episode. Is there anything you want to say? It's really weird. It's usually what you say, Rand. It's shout outs and the promotion,
Yeah.
the ribble
Shout outs
rabble.
and sellout.
Yeah,
I got it. Shout out to everybody out there that owns a cat. Deep down in your soul, you were probably Egyptian at one point if you actually really
stop it. That gives them the N-word pass. Don't tell them
that. Oh no.
The guy on the podcast said I was Egyptian. I can say nigga.
Also, sellout times, sirbudai.com/merch. Feel free to go ahead and check that out.
Definitely we'll say on Amazon, but Amazon being a little buster and not wanting to put our clothes on there.
It has been a while. Hopefully we can get that working soon.
Some new designs, probably soon, TM?
Yeah, actually, yes. Yeah. Been working on a lot of stuff. We also are going to start selling prints. So that's a thing.
Yeah. What's a print?
A print? It's posters.
Oh.
Yeah, digital paintings, crazy, wacky cartoons, things like that.
Why don't you just call it a poster?
Because they're prints of art. They're art prints.
Oh.
And if you're into NFT field, maybe in the next couple months, there might be an buy.
God damn it, dude. How much shit do I gotta do? Why y'all putting all this work on me? What?
And if you go to our YouTube channel, Hypothetically Sound, you'll see our You Laugh, You Lose series and all kinds of different content coming out. So
the Laugh, You Lose series is absolutely something. But if you guys want to hear them sing off tune and out of sync,
never happened.
Or see Alec do the cinnamon challenge and
never happened.
Not handle it well.
Yeah. It clumped in my throat, man.
I thought you were good with clumps in your throat. That's weird.
That's only for you, dog.
Okay. And on that, as we always do, we're just going to end this podcast awkwardly. So thank you guys for listening. We appreciate it.
You're not putting. Don't fucking.
Yeah, I always put it in. I always. If you guys listened, you would see all the shit I leave in.
Yeah, you got me. You got me good. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you. Love you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Hypothetically Sound. We hope you enjoyed the episode. All episodes can be found at hypotheticallysound.podbean.com, as well as on Apple, Spotify, and Pandora. For full unedited video versions of the podcast, please visit us at youtube.com/hypotheticallysound.